Hello everybody, today we are going to be diving back into the long and illustrious career of one of the greatest professional wrestlers in the history of the business. In The Undertaker, the Dead Man, and the Demon of Death Valley. And we're going to talk about a year that is very important and monumental in the career of The Undertaker, but I feel like it gets glossed over by 1998, 1999, and his early years, including his debut in 1990. We're going to be talking about The Undertaker's career and really I guess you could say the introduction and beginnings of the Dead Man character that we've come to know and love in 1997. What did The Undertaker accomplish in 97? Whose huge debut would happen this year as well? And everything in between. So sit back and relax as we look into becoming the Lord of Darkness, The Undertaker's career in 1997. We're kicking it off at the Royal Rumble of 1997, and there was a couple things that happened for the Dead Man at this pay-per-view in particular. He would go on to have a match with Vader, and this would actually be a match where Paul Bearer would turn on his longtime ally in The Undertaker. He would cost Undertaker the match and lead to Vader getting a victory, thus aligning himself with Vader. Now, if you go back to 1996, at least the tail end of the year, Paul Bearer would align himself with Mankind towards the tail end of the year, and that was really the first time that we saw, Bear and Undertaker have some issues throughout the development of his character, but this was another notch in the belt of Paul Bearer betraying the Undertaker, and he would align himself with Vader and cost the Undertaker the match. Then later on in the night, Undertaker would enter into the Royal Rumble and be in the Final Four alongside with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and Vader, who he obviously took on earlier in the pay-per-view like we just discussed. Stone Cold would get eliminated by Bret Hart, but he would make his way back into the ring before the referees could determine that he had been eliminated, thus eliminating Undertaker and Vader as they were trying to eliminate each other from the match, and then going behind the back of the man that he originally got eliminated by in the Hitman, and eliminating Bret Hart to become the winner of the Royal Rumble 1997. We would then look forward to February's In Your House Final Four, where the Final Four of the 97 Rumble would take on each other to determine who would walk out as the new World Wrestling Federation champion. However, the rules of this match were unlike any other match, because not only could you be eliminated by pinfall or submission, but you could also be eliminated just like the Rumble, with being tossed over the top rope and both feet hitting the floor. Bret the Hitman Hart would come out victorious, becoming the new WWF champion, carrying the title towards WrestleMania 13. However, Psycho Sid would be able to capture the World Wrestling Federation Championship before WrestleMania, and he would defend the title against The Undertaker at the Showcase of the Immortals. This is where The Undertaker would defeat Psycho Sid, carrying on his legendary WrestleMania undefeated streak at the time, and becoming the new World Wrestling Federation champion. We would then lead into April's In Your House Revenge of Taker, and this would be where Paul Bearer would try to realign himself with The Undertaker after turning on him and joining Vader. However, Undertaker wasn't so sure, as he had been stabbed in the back by Paul Bearer multiple times before, so it was very difficult for The Undertaker to accept Paul Bearer's offer. He would thus continue to try to get Undertaker's good graces, no pun intended. However, Bear would become more angered as weeks went by because Taker was not accepting his apology and not aligning with him after, like I said, being betrayed so many times before. The more that Bear got angered, the more he would threaten The Undertaker and threaten him in the case of revealing his deepest, darkest secret. The Undertaker would successfully retain his championship at Revenge of Taker, and Bear would continue to threaten Undertaker with revealing the secret that nobody knew except for Paul Bearer. Undertaker would get revenge on Mankind and Paul Bearer at In Your House Revenge of Taker by throwing a fireball in the face of Paul Bearer, severely burning and disfiguring him. Now keep in mind the burning and disfiguring part, as it will continue the longer we get into this video. Even after burning and disfiguring his former manager, Bear wouldn't stop and continued to threaten Undertaker with revealing this deep, dark secret. The stress of Undertaker still being the World Wrestling Federation champion and having this potential reveal looming over his head the entire time forced him to feel like he had no other choice but to realign with Paul Bearer. Taker and Bear would realign for a brief short time. However, the abusive powers of Paul Bear and just the overall attitude that he carried as Taker realigned with him caused Taker to push Paul Bear to the side completely, and this would make Paul Bear feel he had no other choice but to reveal the secret that Undertaker and Bear had kept hidden for so long. The secret would come out as Bear would reveal that the Undertaker had put an end, quote unquote, because I have to be careful on YouTube, to his family inside the funeral home where he was raised in. He had put an end to his family and also had severely disfigured his brother in Kane. Now, Kane wasn't even known up until this point when Bear revealed this secret, and he said that Undertaker had burned down the funeral home where he and his family had lived, and that his brother in Kane, who nobody knew before this point, had been severely burned and disfigured and waiting for the point where he could exact revenge on his brother. With this constant cloud looming over the World Wrestling Federation champion, The Undertaker was still able to successfully retain his WWF championship after defeating the likes of Farouk at the King of the Ring, Stone Cold Steve Austin at In Your House A Cold Day in Hell, and then finally ending the feud with Vader from earlier in the year at the Royal Rumble by defeating him and successfully retaining his World Wrestling Federation championship at In Your House Canadian Stampede. This would bring us to what many people believe to be one of the greatest SummerSlams of all time at SummerSlam 97 Heart and Soul, where The Undertaker would defend his WWF Championship against Bret the Hitman Hart, with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. Undertaker would lose the championship after the constant emotional tension between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels would overflow as Shawn Michaels would try to hit Bret Hart in the head with a steel chair, but he would duck and he would hit the Phenom and the Dead Man in the head instead. This would allow for the Hitman to crawl into the cover and have the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels reluctantly count the 3 count to crown Bret Hart the new WWF champion. This would plant even more seeds going into the ominous Survivor Series 1997 and the Montreal Screwjob, which we could spend time on, but that doesn't really have anything to do with The Undertaker. However, the beginnings of that feud in 97 going into Survivor Series did kind of take a new turn in the development of the Survivor Series main event. We would then trudge forward to In Your House 17 Ground Zero, where after the chair shot that Shawn Michaels landed on the Dead Man, costing him his WWF Championship, Michaels would slowly start to turn on the fans and believe that the fans were fickle after turning their back on him for an accidental chair shot. This would move the Heartbreak Kid into the heel stages of his career, but would also catapult him into a feud with The Undertaker, which would kick off at Ground Zero. The match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels at Ground Zero is regarded by many as one of the best matches of the early Attitude Era and one of the best matches of the year in 1997. However, this match would end via a double countout after the chaos ensued where almost the entire roster came down and it was a big brawl to end the show. We would then move into one of the most famous matches of the early Attitude Era at In Your House 18, where The Undertaker would take on Shawn Michaels for the World Wrestling Federation Championship in the first ever Hell in a Cell match. Now, knowing how big the Hell in a Cell has become up to this point, this was a huge turning point and historical landmark in the development of the pro wrestling business and the development of this feud, to have the first ever Hell in a Cell between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in one of the most violent feuds between two people up to this point in the WWF. The Heartbreak Kid and the Phenom went back and forth, the Heartbreak Kid being busted open, being thrown off the top of the cell, crashing through the announce table, both men just fighting tooth and nail until the eventual debut of The Undertaker's brother. A red hue of lighting would fill up the arena as a theme that no one had heard before would echo throughout it as well. And the big red machine, the long-lost brother of the Phenom in The Undertaker, Kane, who had been mentioned throughout this storyline, made his way down to the ring and tore the door right off the Hell in a Cell. Kane would then enter the Hell in a Cell and stare his brother in The Undertaker directly in the eyes as the red lighting throughout the arena would continue to add to the emotional and sinister effect that this moment in time in the World Wrestling Federation had created. With Paul Bear at his side and Shawn Michaels laid out in the middle of the ring, Kane would hit The Undertaker with his own signature move in the Tombstone Piledriver, thus exiting the Hell in a Cell and allowing Shawn Michaels to crawl into the cover and get the 1-2-3 to become the new World Wrestling Federation champion, all due to the help of the long-lost relative of the Phenom in The Undertaker. And thus, the Big Red Machine was introduced into the WWF, and Undertaker vs. Kane was born. And that's going to be it for The Undertaker's career in 1997, because after this we would lead into the casket match at Royal Rumble 1998, which would continue the feud with The Undertaker and Kane, and even align them and have them join forces later in the year. But I hope you guys enjoyed this look back at The Undertaker's career in 1997, and the Phenom, the Dead Man, and the Demon of Death Valley becoming the Lord of Darkness. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit a big boot on the notification bell, and a Tombstone Piledriver on the subscribe button.